For all the noise surrounding USC and UCLA leaving the Pac-12, no one is saying what is arguably the most important point here. The conference is better with the pair bolting for the Big Ten, at least from a football standpoint that is. While the two Los Angeles schools seem to believe they are Hollywood marquee worthy, the reality is neither are as great as they think they are. It's really a classic case of Southern California self-delusion. The Trojans and Bruins were Brad Pitt in their own minds. In the real world though, they were basically Eldin, the painter for Murphy Brown, who was inexplicably on the show for like 8 seasons. Sure, the two universities were around, but no one was tuning in to see their storylines. If anything, USC and UCLA were a nuisance to Pac-12 football over the past decade. They were occasionally good enough to upset Oregon or Utah and ruin the conference's college football playoff hopes, but they were never good enough to actually compete. Don't believe me? Let's take a look at some of the numbers. Since Pete Carroll left for the NFL after the 2009 season, USC has gone 95-54, and in Pac-12 play, the Trojans are 70-36. These are by no means terrible, but it's also not much better than what Mike Leach managed to accomplish at Washington State with far fewer resources. This is nothing more than a brand name desperately trying to cling to relevancy in a world that may have already passed it by. USC is essentially the Best Buy of college football. On the other hand, UCLA just flat out sucks. Since their 98 Rose Bowl season, the Bruins have gone 146-136, including a comical 95-102 in conference play. That's right, they are under 500 in the Pac-10 and Pac-12 over the past 23 seasons. The Big Ten could have taken Oregon State if the standard is that low, and let me tell you something, Corvallis is a hell of a lot nicer than Pasadena is. Look, USC and UCLA should know better than leaving the Pac-12. And really the main issue with them leaving is the hubris they are doing it with. Instead of seeing the plight of Nebraska and Maryland in the Big Ten and trying to steer clear from it, the pair of LA universities are literally repeating history, and that never ever works. Yet for some reason in America these days, businesses will look at the failure of others and chart the same exact course under one of the following two strands of logic. Either they refuse to acknowledge the clear as day similarities between themselves and the previous failure, or they wrongly believe they are inherently better than the company that failed with no tangible proof of improvement. USC is Nebraska. And the Huskers' time in the Big Ten has been a disaster. Sure, someone is making a lot of money, but that hasn't paid dividends on the football field, where the school seems totally unable to run out a winning team, or even a mediocre one in most seasons. Seriously folks, how has all this extra cash helped Nebraska at all? And at this point, their fan base would gladly return it all in order to be back in the Big 12 where they would be much more competitive. Meanwhile, the similarities between UCLA and Maryland are impossible to ignore. You've got two basketball-led schools with mediocre football programs, and that description's probably being generous. Now, each one is sacrificing games with rivals for meaningless matchups in places no one really wants to be in hopes of making a few extra bucks for someone. And that's the thing, I don't know who will be pocketing all that cash at each school. For whoever it may be, hopefully there is enough to comfort them for the absolutely irrelevant existence they face in the Big Ten. I'm sure those glamour 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time kickoffs against Minnesota and Rutgers are going to be real game changers for USC and UCLA. If anything, it just means they will now be ignored on both sides of the Mississippi instead of just the eastern part. Alright, I'm going to tell you all what's up here. The Pac-12 is a great conference that gets shade thrown on it because people on the East Coast and in the Midwest aren't smart enough to live in what is undoubtedly the world's best time zone, PST for life. You know what? Good riddance to both USC and UCLA because neither deserves to be in the Pac-12. And please, For the love of God, take Bill Walton's awful color commentary with you on the way out. That does it for me. I'm Cheyenne Hollis, watching college football be torn apart at the seams by a bunch of pencil neck geeks most of us have never heard of, who only care about making money for themselves. Until next time, make sure you hashtag take it out to the 25.